So about me, well, I'm Veronica. Nice to meet you all. So thank you so much for joining me. I think it was about 3 years ago that I did my very first presentation about Data Vault exactly in this user group. So I feel a little bit like coming home. And Neil mentioned that I had a pleasure of meeting the Data Vault UK team. They're amazing people, and I now consider them kind of to be my family, my Data Vault family. So about me, I've been working with data since 1999. And the reason I say 99 is because I started my career just as everyone was expecting for the world to end due to the Y2K bug. I was too inexperienced and naive to care, but it was an interesting experience. So for many years, I was actually a database administrator specializing in performance tuning and optimization. So I really have great appreciation for well-designed platforms and databases because they're the ones that perform well and don't break often. So, and at the same time, I also know that there is, theory and by the book, but the reality of our day-to-day business is all about trade-offs. And that's why you often hear us say it depends statements, right? Depending on the situation, there are better solutions and worse solutions. So besides being a DBA, I also held various other roles. My most current role is overseeing data at Saks. Saks is the premier digital platform for luxury fashion in North America. My C-level role is being chief mom officer. I have a couple of boys. I'm also a Snowflake data superhero. I'm not bragging. I just think it's incredibly cool that I have an avatar and I also have a superhero cape. The coolest thing ever. I would be a Snowflake data superhero just for that. Obviously, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I contribute periodically to LinkedIn. This is also how I follow a lot of other people. I learn, I try to share information. So always happy to connect. So I learned about Data Vault existence from Ken Graciano's blog a few years ago, where he said, yes, you can build it on Snowflake. And I went, what the hell's a Data Vault? So I bought Dan's book and pretty much never looked back. My very first implementation of Data Vault was with just me and another engineer. So now I can proudly say that I'm a certified Data Vault practitioner. And we actually have multiple teams working on the Data Vault implementation. I will not call myself an expert. There's so much to learn, but sharing my experience and learning from others is how we collectively get better. So here I am. Okay, stay with me here for a minute. A couple of years ago, my oldest child got his driver's license. So I live in Massachusetts in the United States, and these are the steps that everybody has to take in order to get a driver's license in Massachusetts. So you get your permit, you complete your driver's education, you complete 40 hours of supervised driving, then you have your parent guardian take training course, you pay the fee, you schedule your test, and you pass it. Why am I telling you this? Well, learning Data Vault is a lot like learning how to drive. So welcome to your Data Vault Driver's Ed. I will be your driving instructor. Well, actually, I will not be your driving instructor. I'll be that one brave friend that takes you, in the car, sits with you and kind of helps you to learn how to drive for the first time. All right, so learner's permit. Let's get the very basic fundamentals first. Data Vault is platform agnostic. You can absolutely build it on any data platform, 100%, totally. Having said that, the reality is that not all database platforms are created equally. I only ever had the pleasure of building Data Vault on Snowflake, and I'm in general a huge fan of Snowflake, but I also have a very extensive experience working with SQL Server. And honestly, if somebody came to me and said, hey, I want to build Data Vault on SQL Server, I don't think I would be very happy about it. It's a slightly different experience. SQL Server is a different database platform, but you can absolutely build it on SQL Server. And if you read initial book that Dan wrote, that is where he built Data Vault. And okay, I'm going to be a real judgy here because it's my presentation and I can say whatever I want, but really, why would anybody ever build Data Vault on NoSQL? I mean, you can, Just because you can't doesn't mean you should. I'm kidding. So if I'm being very judgmental here, I always question the need for NoSQL versus relational database. But in general, you should absolutely and can build Data Vault on any data platform. What I want to kind of mention here is that while Data Vault itself is platform agnostic, you should not exclude any sort of best practices that your specific data platform gives you, right? So take advantage of your data platform. I know there's kind of like pros and cons. Some people don't want to go fully into platform because they want to be able to easily re-platform. Re-platforming is very expensive. And taking advantage of each platform features is good for performance oftentimes. So one of the examples, for example, Snowflake has a feature of multi-table insert. Perhaps in some use cases, that's a good thing to do with your data vault. We use extensively variant data type in our Snowflake to insert JSON data. So it's a semi-structured data, gives us a lot of flexibility around certain things. So don't discount things that each specific platform gives you. Yes, Data Vault is absolutely platform agnostic. However, when you kind of like figure out the trade-offs, keep in mind that if there's a feature of the actual platform you're using, please take that into account. It is technology agnostic. Again, tooling platforms don't matter. Data Vault is not constrained to just one. Just like you can run Snowflake in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, you can run your Data Vault where you please. Repeatable, super important. Repeatable is what makes it automatable and agile. I will also add that this is what makes it simple. If you find yourself needing to create something custom that does not follow a standard pattern or is not reusable, you likely took a wrong turn somewhere. And you either did not follow standard, or maybe you just need to take a step back and find a simpler solution. This happens occasionally. Again, we read books, we know theory, but in reality, things are a lot more complicated and complex. For example, if you model a business concept in the wrong way, that's okay. Or if you chose a wrong satellite type. So sometimes you find yourself or like you keep adding these ad hoc solutions to fix specific use case. It's likely that you really taken the wrong turn somewhere. So just take a step back, remodel it, reevaluate. Data Vault has a very specific pattern. It's super automatable, and that makes it incredibly simple. Fault tolerant. I'll give you an example. So at my company, we are set up in the ELT sort of way. So we extract load data into our Snowflake, and then we transform it. That's just how it works. Occasionally, we have to re-snapshot and reload data from source systems to Snowflake. In my experience with traditional data warehouses, doing something like that would have required us to fully reload a data warehouse, full historical reload of all tables. Data Vault handles these events gracefully. It still only inserts records that changed. We actually don't need to do anything with our Data Vault. It just, the initial first read of data, it'll take all the records, but because of the row hashes and business keys, it'll only insert whatever changed. Scalable, right? Adding new sources, changing business rules is easy just due to the additive nature of Data Vault. Again, if you find yourself in a situation where it's difficult to do so, you again took a wrong turn somewhere. It's like I keep going to that in my mind. If something is very difficult to do, it's likely that I am doing it wrong. I know it's like litmus test is not very it's not very specific, but this is kind of where I am. So I take a step back and we'll look at it and I'm like, wait a minute, we're not solving it the right way. So whether you model business concepts correctly, simply remodel in a new way, you have all your data, back populate, reload the new tables, stop loading the old ones. So I see Neil is chatting in the chat, so I'm gonna move forward. All right, driver education. So some of you, I know some of you are in Europe, some of you are somewhere else. Some of you know how to drive. Some of you don't, probably maybe because you live in a city and you have great public transit and you really don't need a car. There's really no reason for you to know how to drive. In the United States, however, driver's license is a commonly accepted form of identification. So some people have it, but they don't own the car, and they haven't really driven since the time they passed the test. There are various reasons for learning to drive or not, right? So data vault is not easy or trivial. It's not a silver bullet that'll solve all your problems. So you actually need to know uh, why you're doing something, because otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure. I've had a conversation with various people that vehemently argue that data vault is unnecessary and a waste of time because they can do everything in whatever they're comfortable in. Totally cool. Absolutely fine. I'm not telling you that you must do data vault, right? I am simply sharing why I think it's great and when it works, right? And there's always more than one way to accomplish something. So this is not me trying to tell you that you're wrong. Absolutely not. If you have a different way to accomplish something and you're comfortable and you're sure, then absolutely go for it. So for me, my data vault journey started because dimensional model was just not flexible and agile enough, right? I worked for a startup, and at the time, their source systems kept changing all the time, and we just couldn't create a dimensional model for it, right? I am now on my third official data vault implementation, and I can tell you firsthand how flexible and agile the methodology is. So I buy wine based on how cool the label looks, and that kind of works out for me. So if you feel that Data Vault name is cool, I think it's a good enough reason to try it. We were just chatting about all the Data Vault and analogies. So I think it's a great reason. Your boss made you do it. Sure, you kind of have no choice. My point is that don't do it for the wrong reasons. If you're going into Data Vault implementation, you're 100% against it, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, right? You're just not gonna get invested into it enough to make it succeed. Again, it's not trivial, it's not easy. The very first time you're doing it, there are a lot of things to learn. Having said that, another story I have for you is that my very first migration from on-prem to the cloud, so it was a few years ago, we started testing. My goal was to prove that there is no value in the cloud. I was perfectly happy being on-prem, figured it all out. Like I said, I specialized performance tuning optimization. Systems were running amazingly well. However, when I tried cloud, I absolutely fell in love with the opportunities. So even if you're against it, still try it, but open your mind to be surprised. All right, do some research, right? As you embarking on your journey, it's a new thing. Google it. I wrote a blog a little while ago listing a bunch of resources. There's a lot more resources now. Rewatch all the old sessions from, this user group. There's a few other amazing Data Vault user groups that are out there. There's videos, blogs, etc. There's amazing Unlocking the Data Vault podcast right now that Cindy, Dan, and Sanjay are running. Even if you don't end up going with Data Vault, I think it's still an amazing podcast. Talks a lot about like fundamental data concepts. All right. Don't build Data Vault without clear use case. Just it's like driving on the highway without ever taking an exit. You'll just keep driving, but you'll never actually get anywhere. So what type of use case should you start with? Go with whatever's going to wow your users, right? Once you wow them, you'll get them hooked. They'll want more. So see if there's something you can find that brings the highest business value, right? Or maybe it's the most impactful. Or perhaps it's something that was impossible in the past, but now with the Data Vault methodology, you can accomplish that. Realistically, however, honestly, I would suggest to start with something that your team is most comfortable with, right? If you're just a data vault beginner, you already have a lot to learn with the methodology, the model, the agile delivery. Adding a new and unknown to you business concept and data set will slow you down even further. So practice on what is the easiest for you and your team. So, and of course, another option, find, your friendlies, we'll call them friendlies, those business users that like love you, because you'll be having a lot of conversations with them. So far, so good. Everyone with me? All right. Well, most of us, hopefully all of us, work with data because we love it, right? We enjoy getting lost, going down all those various rabbit holes. Um, Data as a field is also still lagging behind software and following agile principles. So be mindful of what you're actually trying to accomplish in each task. Keep it short and sweet. Make it so that you really deploy something at the end of each sprint, whatever your sprint is, but don't forget to come back and iterate. I think Mike Migalski was the one who said it takes about 3 sprints to get Datable objects to kind of like done enough. What I've observed so far is that no matter how much time we as developers spend on trying to perfect something, once we let somebody else take a look at what we created, they'll come back to us with feedback. So just get your work close enough, roll it out, let others start testing it and giving you feedback. Pick 1 or 2 source systems, right? Again, keep your scope small. Take all applicable data. Okay, this is an interesting one. Applicable data doesn't mean take all data, and we've run into that. There's some data in our source systems that is more of kind of like sort of metadata to keep that source system running. We don't need it. That data has no value. So my initial thing was like, I took it literally, take all data, right? No, take all data that has meaning to you, to your business concept. The gotcha here is that if you only limit yourself to 1 or 2 business systems, there's a good chance that you'll kind of fall into a bias and try to mimic that source system. So just be very, very kind of careful with that. You do want to build out a business concept first. So don't get influenced at how a specific source system, source data is supporting that business concept. Oh, okay, agility. So I've been doing Agile since the day when we had to put sticky notes on whiteboard. So it's been quite a while, and there's a lot of, books on the subject. Scott Ambler's book Choose Your Wow is great, and he's presenting next week, I think Neil, you said. So it's going to be an amazing presentation. Highly recommend everybody to join. But at the end of the day, to me as a leader, what's important is throughput, right? I want to see progress right away. I'm also very impatient, and I'm just tired of project that takes months and then don't actually deliver what I need. So whatever your team ends up doing, whether it's Scrum, Kanban, or whatever the new word is, make sure that you deliver in small, frequent increments. And again, everyone still wants a date. So we as hard as we try, we can't get away from it. But once you get into this small, fast increment delivery, you'll actually figure out your pace and your cadence. So you'll have a generally good idea of when you can deliver something that your users can start using. We all know, the whole good, fast, cheap, and that you can only really have 2. Incrementally delivering is good and fast, right? It potentially at some point in your project, somebody might say, okay, this is good enough, right? We can no longer spend more time and therefore more money on this project. Let's stop. This isn't a good enough place. Don't do cheap for the sake of cheap. That's tech debt. You're gonna have to pay it in X times. We're focusing on data vault. This is, kind of like data vault presentation, right? but getting your data into raw or business vault is actually not super useful to most of users. Make sure you deliver your data products all the way to information marts or dashboards. Again, we can spend all this time modeling data, loading it into our data vault, but if our users, general users can use it, there's obviously a set of advanced users that can query data vault, but the rest of them are expecting data in specific shape or form, and that is generally either in information marts or dashboards. So if you don't take your work all the way there, that seems like you haven't been doing anything. And so I'm not going to bring data mesh here because I think we always wait until about 5 minutes before the end of the meetup to talk about data mesh. Seems to be a very controversial subject. But so in my company, my team, we actually have 5 functional squads that are, again, focused on specific business concepts. We do find ourselves with some subset of concepts that overlap. So the last thing I want to end up with is having multiple hubs that have the same data, that kind of like define the same business concept. So for us, what works is we have architectural, cross-team architectural walkthroughs. Every, like once a week, we get together and engineers share any sort of new business concept they're working on, or just kind of do deep dives. And again, reality is, I mean, we do end up in situations where we have really the same hubs with kind of trying to describe a variation of the same business concept. And that's okay. I think for me, why I love Data Vault so much is because you can easily refactor that. You can adjust your schema, you can redefine it, remodel, start loading your new objects, and just retire the old ones. Okay, all right. So I think we got the learner's permit out. We're ready to go driving. Put on your helmets, buckle your seatbelts. Let's go. So, okay, I know, I'm sorry. You do have to talk to your business users, even that are not engineers, like really regular business people that probably don't understand half of what you're saying. I know I mentioned that a good way to start Data Vault implementation is working on data that we're the most familiar with. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk to business users, right? People who are actually understanding that data from the business perspective. The cool thing is that if you truly have a great understanding of your data set, they will just validate your understanding. Or honestly, I can tell you from my first-hand experience that I am always surprised. I know that like I really truly have a lot of biases. The other thing is show up prepared. So you don't want to sit in the room with people that are either just quiet or awkward or I don't know, just a waste of time. When I say show up prepared, you don't have to be right. Just write something down, write your understanding. People are very happy to point out how wrong you are, right? So don't take it personally. At the end of the day, the goal is to actually learn and to know what the right things are. So just write something down. Kind of like my thing is I come with something, with some theory or some proposal. If nothing else, just for everybody else to tell me how wrong I am, right? But in the end, that's how I learned what the right thing to do is. Something important, application owners, people that are responsible for maintaining an application, is not the same as business users. Very important groups of people to talk to, but application owners will tell you exactly how a system works. So that will bias you toward building a data vault that mimics a source system. So be very careful with that. You do want to know the details of how data is stored, what tables to use, what queries to write, but just keep in mind that is not the same as actually understanding the business concept. Okay, write everything down, truly, please. We all love documentation, we all hate to create it. So as you learn stuff, even if it's not exactly applicable, you're there, take notes, publish them somewhere. People who come after you will absolutely love you, right? And the other thing is map source systems. Oftentimes when we have conversations, even though our scope is just one or two systems, there are other ones that come up. Note them. Likely they will be in scope in some future iteration, um, but write them down. So you just kind of want to know that this specific, business concept also needs data from some other system that is not in scope right now, but it might be later. All right, so I see VD is my initials. Will, why are you talking about me? All right, okay, iterate. And I mentioned this before, no matter how much each one of us test, someone else will always find issues. That is the cool thing about it. So just deploy your code, deploy your objects, let others help you sooner rather than later, get feedback, fix, refactor your code. I do have a demo. I always have a demo. So again, one of, I think, kind of like, being a DBA, I was always worried that, some production data patch will overwrite some important data and we'll never be able to get it back. So because of the additive nature of Data Vault, you can always refactor. You have all of your data. You can reload. Totally cool. Just relax, move forward, be agile, keep iterating. It takes a few iterations to get to a point where your objects are where they need to be and your system is built the way you need it to be. One of the cool things, as I mentioned, like take advantage of what your data platform gives you. Like for example, Snowflake has time travel. We've actually used it in the past to back populate some additional history. So that was super cool, something to keep in mind. Treat mistakes like getting lost. So took a wrong turn, no big deal, retrace your steps, adjust your course, move forward. Again, making mistakes, it's just part of kind of like making progress. This is not really Data Vault specific, but it will contribute to the success of your Data Vault implementation. Don't forget about performance. Cloud data platforms are very flexible and scalable, and we don't really feel performance pain until it shows up on our bill in the form of compute cost. So ensure that we're following a pattern that allows us to only capture change records and not scan more data than we need. Check how often the jobs runs, your transformation jobs run, right? Not every job needs to run all the time. Just be smart about it. And of course, the cheapest job is the one that does not run. So I'm not saying run everything once a day. I'm not saying run everything every, 30 seconds. Just be smart about it. Okay, pay the fee. We always have to pay the fee. So invest in automation. Data Vault is pattern-based. Again, if you find yourself needing to build something that is ad hoc or custom, you likely took a wrong turn somewhere. Data Vault is very pattern-based. It should be very automatable. Automation saves time and reduces mistakes. I think that doing the very first implementation manually is a great idea because this is the way we learn, right? Like for me, I have to understand something first, and kind of doing that first implementation by hand is how I got all the little parts and pieces of it, how they fit together, why we're doing certain things. After that, automation. Um, as you can see from my slide, I personally lean towards buy, and there are multiple different tools available on the market right now. Uh, you also don't have to spend a lot of money. There is, DBT and DBT Vault, which are, open source. So absolutely use that. Or you can build your own. Nothing wrong with that. While, there are reasons, valid reasons for teams to build their own automation. I think there is a presentation next week, if I'm not mistaken, with Noel, who is going to be talking about homegrown automation. Fun to see, again, whether you know, build or buy, invest in automation. Um, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that doing data vault manually is a very unpleasant experience. All right, we are ready. Thank you for driving carefully with me. So pass the wrong test. I mean, sorry, pass the road test, not the wrong test. I won't pass the right test. Life, is not simple, and neither are companies. The first implementation will likely be slow, and that's okay. It'll require a lot of iteration, and that is totally expected. But keep practicing. Practicing makes perfect. And also, the further you get into data vault implementation, the easier it will become. At some point, you'll have most of your business concepts modeled and in forms of hubs, and all that will be left is adding new satellites or creating new links. Going to be a little bit controversial here. I am actually not into certifications. I don't think somebody getting certified is an indicator of them truly understanding what they're doing. I think certifications are like you can read and memorize stuff. That's okay if you're into it. I highly, however, recommend taking formal data vault training to fill in those gaps. If you have some, gaps in understanding of data vault methodology, or at least, kind of like going through the training will help you. If nothing else, you'll know that, you know everything you need to know. I learn, I love to learn. I learn to understand, and I honestly, I don't like learning just for the sake of passing a test. But I am data vault certified, so it's not been an easy test. And share your story. Neil mentioned that please share your stories. I am a chapter lead for Snowflake Data Vault user group, uh, looking for new presenters. If you are unsure, but you kind of want to present, please let me know. I'll help you out. Present for this user group, for any user group, write blogs. Please share your stories. I, sometimes I see messages like, oh, data vault sucks. And I'm like, well, you give me reasons, give me your experience. I want to know. I want to know maybe when not to use data vault, right? Like, again, data vault is not a silver bullet. As much as I love it, I totally understand it's not applicable to everything. But I would like to know those use cases where maybe I shouldn't be using data vault. All right, so we have 20 minutes left. There's always demo. If you know me, there's always demo. And there's always demo with superhero database. So, all right, superhero, definitions of superhero. So I love demos, by the way. I totally hate slides, which is why I always try to squeeze in a little demo. And so superheroes are cool because I love watching movies, and I kind of figured that I know everything about superheroes. So I'm like, all right, cool, this is going to be an amazing simple data set to present to you, kind of like how to build a superhero data vault. Well, so first of all, definition of superhero. It's a fictional hero having extraordinary or superhuman powers. Awesome. So, but like I said, even if it's a concept that you're familiar with, you should still talk to business users. So I happen to have two boys who are superhero experts, and I decided to chat with them just to make sure that, my understanding of superheroes was correct. Well, it turns out that it wasn't. Uh, Superheroes are quite interesting. Some of them are born with superpowers. Some of them acquire superpowers, like Spider-Man, for example. And then this whole like Captain Marvel, it's like a title, or like different people can become Captain Marvel. So as you can see, the superhero data set is becoming more and more like real life data where there's nothing simple about it. So here's my what I call a fun party model. So a being acquires a superpower to become a superhero, and then superhero belongs to one or more super teams. Some links. So a link to sign up for Snowflake. I'll be using Snowflake. No surprise there. And this is GitHub to data and my code if you want to try to play around with it yourself. And here is my interrelation diagram. This is what I'm going to be building. I'm using SQL DBM. Again, another cool tool. And the other cool thing about here is lineage. So superhero beings all is a view. So the rest of them are tables. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. How is everybody? Still awake? I know I don't see you.
We're here.
All right, well, thanks, Akip. At least you're here. I appreciate it. Everybody, like, I can just see you snoring. I'm just kidding. Any questions so far? No? All right, cool. So I, you know, because it's a demo, I preloaded data already. So I have database called raw, and then I have some tables in it. So as it turns out, while, you know, there's whatever X number of superheroes from all the comics, there are actually many different data sets. Again, welcome to real life. So I was trying to kind of like find a simple data set for you know, for demo, because demos shouldn't be complicated. But it turns out that superheroes are a lot like real life. So anyway, so the question about Oliver, for when not to use Data Vault, I would like to know that too. I saw some, that was kind of like my comment. I saw some general comments from people saying, oh, somebody tried Data Vault and it didn't work for them. And I said, this is amazing. Could you please share a story? I actually want to know when not to use Data Vault. I think my general feel is that if you have a handful of, you know, data systems, data sources that don't change, and your business doesn't change, then you probably okay not using a data vault. For me, I would use data vault everywhere, so I'm biased, but kind of like my point is, if you ran into a case where data vault was not the right solution, please share your story so we can kind of all collectively learn from it. So anyway, so I have some tables. One of them has JSON. So I have semi-structured data. And then I have, let me see. And I'm going to kind of start with this data set. As I started kind of going through figuring out what my business key should be to define superheroes, just like with any customer data, using name is not a good idea. So there are multiple rows with the same name. So name is not a good business key to use. So I actually have, sorry, I have two sources. I have heroes information, I have Marvel search, which is JSON again. So there are rows that have, there are multiple rows with the same name. So having name is not a good idea. So instead, I decided to use something else, which is more of like a source system ID to uniquely identify each row. So let's go and create Data Vault object. So the script will create my hub being, my satellite for Marvel search, and a satellite for superhero dataset. So I'm also going to be then showing you how to tie these two different IDs together through same as link. And I'm also using same as link, satellite hanging off of same as link to describe the relationship. So let's create some objects for us. All right, let's start with loading Marvel search. This is my semi-structured data in JSON. So I am taking, so I'm using my business key collision code. I'm prefixing it with the source. And the other thing that I'm doing, which I find it useful, kind of adding additional metadata information into record source column. Again, I'm using Snowflake. Snowflake is amazing with semi-structured data. So I am loading that column as a variant data type in JSON, which would enable me to add additional things if I wanted to, additional metadata about my records. So I'm gonna create my stage view. So here we go. So stage view is where you add those additional metadata, if you will, fields that are required for the data vault. So record hash, business key collision code, hub business key. Okay, so we're gonna load data into hub being, and we're gonna load data into Marvel search. All right, so let's go back to demo and let's run some queries. Okay, so here's what I have in hub being. So I basically define my business key as just a URL pointing at the Wikipedia for a specific superhero. And this is what I currently have in my satellite. So I actually decided to take my JSON just like that. I didn't parse it. I only extracted a name, but I kept everything else in the JSON. So one of the things, again, you can do in Snowflake, taking advantage of Snowflake capability, is not having to parse every attribute field out of JSON into its own column. So this gives us a lot of flexibility. We're doing schema on read, so we can instead just extract necessary information for our information marts and keep everything as is in raw data vault. All right, cool. So let me see if I created the subject. I haven't yet. All right, so see how I suffix this with raw? So I'm actually gonna project effectivity dates in the view on top of this table. So I want to know, I want to add effectivity from and effectivity due to dates and is current. So I can easily identify the latest record for each of my business keys. So let's go back to this and create an effectivity view. So, and the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to insert a record. I'm going to update, make a change to one of my records, one of the JSONs, and I'm going to insert a new one. Cool. So let's take a look at this one. Okay, so remember, this is a view that projects effectivity dates. So here we go. So this was effective from, when I first inserted to the time a new modification was inserted, and this is the current record. So you can do that. Another kind of thing is start with a view for your business vault and information marts. But obviously, as you start running into performance issues, as you get more and more data, this is when you potentially want to materialize those into tables. Okay, so let's load our other new data set. Again, additive nature of data vault is that as I get new data set, I can just simply add it to already existing hub, maybe link, maybe create a new one and create an additional satellite. So I am creating a new stage view for my new data set. This one, I'm combining data from two tables. There's a lot of records. A lot of fields. I'm gonna scroll a little bit. Then I'm gonna insert data into hub being, same one, and into create a new satellite. All right, we're running out of time. So super cool. Now I have two data sets with the same data, two satellites. what do I do next, right? I have data for the same heroes, superheroes in 2 different satellites. They are the same. There's only, finite number of superheroes. So I'm going to create a same as link, and I'm going to map superheroes to each other based on aliases. So what I'm saying is if name in one data set matches an alias in the other, I consider them to be the same. So I am going to load same as link. And then, okay, so let's do this one first, which is great. So this is telling me that, this key is the same as that key. But I also want to see a little bit more information of why I mapped them, what was actually the same about it. So I'm putting a satellite to be attached to that same as link, where it'll give me a little bit more details. So this is what it looks like. So it's telling me that this is why it's mapped. So name Captain America was mapped to Hawkeye because Hawkeye was in the alias list. And since we're at time, as I mentioned before, I have all this data in my Raw Vault, Business Vault. It is not exactly super useful for end users. So what we need to do is create information mart. And I'm going to create a view called beings all. And I'm gonna just scroll down in my demo so we can take a look at it. So this is, as you notice, that I have named Spider-Man that's mapping to other different species, and you can do all kinds of information with it. So this is kind of all I have for demo, but there's a lot more to do. Somebody asked on LinkedIn how to handle deleted soft deletes. So I was like, this is such a great idea. So maybe next time I'll add that into demo as well. And if I'm really ambitious, I want to use dbt Vault next time. And of course, I haven't separated superhero teams data out of my JSON either. So a lot more work. This is iterative process. This was just the first sprint of working on this data set and trying to give you an example.